if anyone draws back, my soul has no pleasure in him. Verse 39. But we are not of those who draw back to perdition, but of those who believe to the saving of the soul. The author of Hebrews is very clear. Don't lose hope. Don't give up. Don't walk away from Jesus. Don't turn and walk away from the church just now. I know that it's not easy having to be ostracized from your family. I know that it's difficult, the persecution that you're facing. I know that life is not necessarily easy, but remember this important fact: Jesus is simply better. Don't give up. Amen. When Jesus is at the center of it all, we always have hope. We always have a reason to continue to move forward with Jesus, the best possible alternative this life has to offer. One more verse as I wrap up here. He continues then after that by giving the example of the faithful of the past. And then he gets to Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. It says, therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, the faithful of the past, we have the evidence of these individuals sticking with Jesus even when things were tough. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us. This would be actually a good time for me to say something. The biggest issue that humanity has, that's breaking and hurting and damaging humanity, is sin. That's not news. I know it's not. I'm not going to charge you anything for that, because no, it's not news. It's not news theoretically. But the truth of the matter is, in reality, we struggle with that. And this is where the rub comes in with so many of these individuals that are outside of the church, so many of these individuals that are now atheists and agnostics. We're here, God is telling us that He is calling us to something better, because a life with Jesus and a life where sin is not the most important thing to us, selfishness, because all sin is selfishness, is not the most important thing to us. That life is simply better. That's the basic message of Jesus. That's the basic message of Christianity. But then all of a sudden, all we do is we come into the church and we take our sinful practices and we morph them into something different that's just as bad and just as ugly in the church. Let me just say this. The view that people have of the church is easy to say, man, the history of the church, man, these other Christians over here. Let me say this. We are all better off if we all personally own that label and seek to make Jesus the center to change that label. Because sitting here blasting and blaming everybody else doesn't help anything, and it actually shows that you're just as much a part of the problem. I'll continue. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. And here is the key for us in verse number 2. Looking unto who? Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. And I love how it's rendered, for that part of verse number 2 is rendered in the New American Standard Bible. It says, looking unto Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. As we are walking with Jesus and as we are experiencing something better with Jesus, we become more like Jesus. We become better like Jesus each moment and each day. The goal for the author of Hebrews, when these individuals are tempted to give up, when they're tempted to lose confidence, when they're tempted to lose hope, he says, fix your eyes, fix your mind, fix your heart on Jesus. Amen. Because Jesus is simply better. When you're tempted to give up, when you're tempted to turn and walk away, when you look around and you see broken individuals inside of the church doing broken people things, remember, you're not here for people. You're here for Jesus, and Jesus wants to use you. Jesus wants to use me to reflect the beauty of who he is. If we really believe, if we really embrace that Jesus is simply better, life for us becomes better too. Amen. And then we become a part of the solution instead of continuing to be a part of the problem. Jesus is simply better. Jesus is simply beautiful. We have overcomplicated the church. The church lost its beauty, lost its luster when it became man-centered, man-focused, a man at the top, or people this, people that, when it became more people-focused. And it lost its focus on Jesus. Paul said, I desire to know nothing among you except Jesus and him crucified. That was the basic message of the early church. Look at the book of Acts. They changed the world, brought the gospel to the entire world, and they went forward doing that, simply proclaiming Jesus. Jesus fixes the broken. Jesus cures disease. Jesus fixes that which is wrong with humanity, not the church, and dare I say, not legislation. We're trying to push a political agenda to accomplish the mission of Jesus. You're trying to do something that Jesus himself didn't try to do. The next question that was asked to this group of individuals, the second question. So the first question is, what do you think of the church? Their response was overwhelmingly and totally negative. All four of them. The person that was the most positive, he was just simply like, well, the church does some good things. Church does some bad things. But overall, if it didn't exist, those individuals would probably still do the same thing. That was the most positive statement about the church. That was the first question. Second question, though, that was asked, what do you think about Jesus? Now, I will be honest with you. After hearing the response to the first question, I wasn't very surprised. When that second question was asked, I sat back for a moment, and I said to myself, I have a feeling that their response to the second question is actually going to be different than their response to the first. And you know what? I was right. What do you think about when you think of Jesus? Literally each of them, all four of them, they were like, well, when I think about Jesus, I actually don't think about Jesus connected with the church, because the church has actually done more to distort and to make Jesus look bad. But when I think about the person of Jesus, there's something about him, using my own words here, but basically the conclusion of what they said is, there's something about Jesus that's attractive. One of them said, I would actually be open and curious to know more about Jesus, because it seems like Jesus is all about mercy, he's all about love, he's all about forgiveness, he's all about all of these good virtues, and I don't see those things in the church, but I really would like to know more about Jesus. By this point, I hope you're beginning to see the problem. I hope it's clear. The church, to a large extent, has disconnected the thing or the person that brings the most value to the church. What they were saying is, I'm not interested in your church, but I'm interested in your Jesus. The thing is, our church, in reality, should be all about our Jesus. And if they have walked away with the conclusion, I'm not seeing this Jesus fella in your church, but I'm curious about Jesus, then that means that we probably need to step back and evaluate ourselves for a moment and say, how can we get to the place where Jesus is really the center of everything we do, every message we preach? Every song we sing, every lesson we teach, is Jesus really at the center of it all? When it comes to our lives outside of church, is Jesus at the center of it all? Does everything about us revolve around Jesus? Because there's a world out there longing to experience the Jesus that we should know. And the truth of the matter is, there's a church right here longing to have a deeper, richer experience with Jesus. If the author of Hebrews could communicate to us today like he communicated to the Hebrew Christians before, he would simply say, make everything you do revolve all around Jesus, because Jesus is simply better. To a world in need, a world longing for something more, longing for something better, Jesus is the answer. For the church, Jesus is the answer. Everything is all about simply Jesus. Amen.